All right, welcome back to our DNA, where we are real, raw, and sometimes a little ridiculous. I am Brandon, sales vet, all boy dad 4 times, and today I might have to confess a few ego moments of my own.
I'm Phil Price, and I have a lot of ego moments, so I want to confess. I'm in sales and been in auto sales my whole career.
All right, and I'm David Medina. I'm a writer, I'm a salesperson, and I'm part owner of the Creative Collective. And I deal with ego all the time, dealing with myself. And then in the communities that I'm in, there's big egos all the time that I have been able to get through and interact with. So we'll be talking about that as well.
All right, buckle up, guys. Today we're talking ego. And for those who haven't watched before, ego stands for Edging God Out. So let's go. So, this topic is personal for us because it's something that Philip himself and I have had these conversations, and Philip, this is something that for you has really been, uh, I guess, a big lesson in your life that you've learned and that you've stuck with. Okay, so, Philip, tell me, start? When did you see ego impacting your life?
Well, as a younger person, it was a big part of who I was. I was very braggadocious, very confident of myself, and from the early age of 18 to probably about 60, it impacted my life. It really did. I made some bad decisions based on ego, and it's when you don't you want the spotlight for yourself. You don't want to share.
Yeah.
You want the spotlight on you all the time, and I have a million stories of things that in my life that it affected me with ego. And that's why I say it's one of the worst things you can possess because pride and ego will get you in trouble. If you're just sometimes too prideful, it'll stop you from growing, Mhm. in my opinion.
So, so it wasn't just confidence, right?
Yeah, because I've met people that have quiet confidence. They don't have to tell you how great they are. But I was one of those people as a young man that I really had to tell people how great I thought I was. And it's funny to me now, as a 73-year-old man, that the people I admire in sports and other things are very humble people. Um, because when you see somebody doing it different than the way you did it, it's very refreshing when you see the results they get. Because
Now,
if you allow people to tell you that you're great, but you're humble about it, it's like my favorite players are Lamar Jackson, Steph Curry. Um, they're humble, but they're great. And it's I love when Lamar Jackson won his first MVP at 21, and he says the narrator says, "Well, how do you stay so humble?" He said, "Well, first of all, if I start thinking I did this, I'd mess this thing all up." He says it's all God-given talent. And to hear a 21-year-old kid say that when you didn't learn it till 60, it's very humbling, very humbling. I made some bad choices. I'd made a choice to separate from my wife that I'd been with for 24, 25 years. Um, ego, because I didn't put in my computer how much of a team we were. Because when I met her, I didn't have any money in the bank. And we together got our net worth up to about 80 million. And, but I have to share what my mom said to me one day. She says, you just don't get it, do you? And I go, what do you mean, Mom? She says, you just don't get it. And I go, what are you talking about? And I says, well, I bought you a house. I did this. I did that. I start saying I. And she says, that's what I'm trying to tell you. You don't get it. She says, I never hear you giving God the credit or your family. All I hear you saying is what you did. And it didn't, when you are stuck with your ego, it went over my head. I didn't even hear it. But every day now, since my mom has been gone, I swear to you, I hear that. And it's humbled me beyond what I can even imagine. But
Now,
that's why I
how
wanted.
old were you? How old were you when she told you this? And then how old were you when you understood it?
She told me that when I was probably about 48 years old. I just bought her a house in Mississippi, but I wanted all the credit because I wanted all the glory. And when you are so consumed with ego, my birthday is August 6th. I'm a Leo. And I have a friend named Ben Sale who's a Leo also. He only happens to be worth about 500 million. But he is the complete
That's it.
opposite. Yeah, his birthday is 2 days later than mine, and our personality is completely different.
Hmm.
Completely different. He
Wow.
if he walked into your house tomorrow, you'd probably loan him $10 so he could get some food because he don't look like what he's worth.
Hmm.
He don't act it. He don't talk it. He's the complete opposite. I mean, he don't brag about what he has, and I mean he owns a ranch in Montana that's worth about 42 million. He's got,
Wow.
he's got. I mean, but I didn't know that about him until I knew him for probably about 4 years.
Wow.
And I got to share one other person, my attorney. His name was Steve McCarthy. I He was my attorney from the day I went in business in 1989 until I went out of business in 2010, 2010. Uh, One day he says, well, I want to take you to the club. And I'm wondering, what kind of club can you be a member of, right? I didn't know it.
Hmm.
And it's called the Bohemian Grove. It's a billionaires boys club. And I go, and I knew what it was. And I go, how long have you been a member of that club? He
Hmm.
said 125 years. I said, what? He says, and I think about it. I've been in business with him for 17 years. He never mentioned that.
Wow.
But he was a man. I'll give you another story about him. When my mom came to town, he would shut his office down to come and have Bible study with her. And they would do it for 8 hours together, sit there and talk about the Bible. Shut his law firm down. I mean, seriously. And I mean, this is a busy guy. This ain't no. But he would shut his business down and come and have Bible study with her. 17 years. And he says, oh, thanks for advertising on our radio station. I says, your radio stations? He says, yeah, we own CAF and all these other. I says, really? I never heard about it. You know what he said to me? He says, that's the difference between old money and new money. He says, because he grew up in that and he never, ever mentioned how successful his family was.
Hmm. Wow.
And
Well,
if I
it
could live
makes me
my life
think.
over, that's the road I would take. If I could live my life over, if there was some magical way you could relive life, I'd be a totally different person because I see the value in it now. But when you're young, sometimes you make mistakes. And, the beauty about getting older is you got to be true to yourself. When you're young, sometimes you can lie to yourself. But when you get older, you got to live in some regrets and your celebrations. you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been there where I could definitely see where there's been times where instead of saying like asking God if I should do something or if it's right for me or even leaning into him for guidance, it's always like I got this, right? I can do this. Like I'm like I got this, and I like that confidence. I always wanted to have that confidence for myself, but that's the first thing I thought versus humbling myself a little bit and talking to God for a second, right? And asking him if this is the way I should go or the decision I should be making. And it sounds like your friend didn't put God above his business, right? He would sit there and do his Bible study with your mom.
God was number one. He loved the Lord. He was a very, very humble man, and we're still friends, and we talk all the time. And he's just an incredible human being. I was fortunate enough to go to the Bohemian Grove with him, and he never told me what the fees are, but he said, "Phil, if I told you what the fees cost to be a member for a year, you'd have a coronary." He says it's I mean, the people I met there was just some incredible human beings. I mean,
Wow.
it was something like out of a movie. And the security is so tight. I mean, no cameras, no phones, no nothing. They search you before you go in there.
Wow.
Mhm. Every Republican president has been a member of the Bohemian Grove.
Hmm.
The president, when he made the decision to drop the atomic bomb, was at the Grove when he made the decision.
Wow.
Wow.
And there's pictures showing the Rockefellers coming to the Grove in the 1800s.
Wow.
I mean, you should see
No.
this thing. It's amazing. Very few people have ever seen inside of it, and I feel honored that I got a chance to see both places. They have a club on Post Street in San Francisco, and they have by the Russian River. They have 2,500 acres, and they're cowboys. They ride their horses, and it's a men's only club, though. Only men can join,
Interesting.
and the who's who of the world are a member of it. So it's pretty incredible.
So, okay, so Philip, where do you see ego now in your life or around your life, either with the younger generations, maybe yourself, but just in general, where do you, now that you're, you know, uh, outside of the ego more than you were, where do you see it now in your life or around
Still,
you?
I see a lot of Phil Prices out there. I see a lot of people that put money before God, like I did, and I'm worried because I have grandkids what the world is going to look like. So I have a lot of
Down.
concerns. I really do. I have concerns.
Mhm.
Do you see what I see, or do you see something different?
What about you, David? What do you see? Like, because obviously
Yeah.
you're more into social media, you're more younger generation. You know, where do you see, just your own self
Yeah.
maybe
So,
seeing
oh,
this?
myself first is what
Well,
you're
just
saying, or
both.
yeah.
Go for it.
So I guess I'll start with the question myself. In general, I've seen, making more money definitely gives you a reason to have a, inflated fake ego. I wouldn't even say a real ego. Just kind of makes you feel like, you're on top of the world, you're doing better, um, you know, um, doing something that you weren't able to do, especially coming from, give me one second. Philip, can you mute real quick?
Hmm.
Thank you. Especially coming from, like a impoverished family and people struggling like that. So when you kind of, for example, I was making last year basically more than both my mom and dad combined, and that like gave me this inflated ego because I was trying to help myself, but also help out my mom and stuff like that. Like I just thought, wow, I'm that guy, and then I realized once I started seeing the money go down again because the months were bad or whatever, that's when I realized, okay, I need to take a step back and need to, you know, check myself, especially being on this podcast with you guys, talking to you guys, and being able to understand that, I can catch myself faster than, you guys have told me some of your stories and how you guys were like that for years. For me, it's like, all right, I need to check myself now before I end up having that regret as well. That's just how I've always been as a person. I always try to get ahead of things so that way I don't mess something up. And that's something my mom taught me, so that's for myself at least. And then in the spaces that I work, is full of ego. They're all full of ego. I literally work in sales, and I've seen some of the biggest heads ever. Dealing, and probably no more than like $200,000 a year. And don't get me wrong, that's great money. I don't make that money yet, but $200,000 a year, and you're acting like you're a billionaire over here. Like,
Right.
it's like, okay, like you're doing good, but I don't know. Sorry, people are too much with their ego when it comes to money, and then also with art. As an owner of the Creative Collective, we host a lot of events that pertain to artists, like music and writing of all kinds of art. And oh my gosh, artists are some of the biggest egos you'll ever meet. And it's even funnier when they're broke and have nothing going on but their art, and it's still not even as good as they think it is. So it's really hard to navigate life without being around a bunch of people who are just so inflated in their ego, because especially here in LA. I mean, they don't, our thing is edging God out. Most of these guys that I talk to don't even believe in God. They don't even believe there's anything out there. They just, I don't know what they believe in, but they're not willing to say it. Or if they do, it's,
Themselves.
yeah, they believe in themselves. But even that, like, you can't just believe in yourself. You need to believe in something higher. That's just my personal belief, whether it's God or the universe or whatever you believe in. I just don't think anybody can do it themselves. I don't think that's how it works.
It doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I would agree with what you were saying, but that's what I'm seeing. So, Brandon, do you see that, or am I just, every older person worries about the next
Next
generation?
generation.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
tell me, what do you see?
For myself, I've lived through ego just in general from, the traditional sense, feeling like I'm, like David said, you start making more money than most people in your family. You start wanting to tell people what to do in a sense because you think you know what the right answer is. I had to learn to not put my thoughts and opinions and force my help upon people because I always thought I had the answer. I knew what they should do. Like, do this, this, and this. And I'd get a little upset when people didn't listen to me, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
you're not listening to me. Look what I got, right? Me, me, me. Um, but I had to realize and like humble myself to the point where like my story and my journey is only mine and not others. And instead of focusing on what they should do, I need to focus on myself and my relationship with God and what He wants me to do. Right.
Yeah.
Here I am telling other people what to do when I'm not even listening to God Himself. Right.
Yeah.
So, um, just to like tie it down to some sales kind of scenarios for me where, I had certain rough patches in my life or a divorce and I took some time off coming back into sales. And then
Yeah.
like I was going like I always did, but I wasn't closing. And one of the most humbling moments for me was when I finally realized that, listen, there was someone I trusted in the industry to close deals because I helped them, I trained them, I know how good they were. And I had to realize, like, let me get my bearings straight again. Let me get like back where I need to be. And until then, I started sending all my deals to this one person, which as a top tier closer, as the number one person, the last thing you want to do is show that weakness, right? Like, oh, I'm going to send it to someone else to do it because I can't do it, right? Like that's what that feels like, or that's what you putting out there. But I made a lot of money during that time, and I got myself back on my feet, and then I was able to pick up right where I left off. So that was a very humbling moment for me. That was a moment where I had to let my ego go. I had to listen to God and I had to just go with what He was telling me to do. And it was right. It worked. It got me back where I needed to be. But, you know, like David said, we work in sales. We're in LA. So yeah, even having the topic or even saying the word God is far and few in between nowadays in conversations, right? Um, and I see most people are even nervous or even a little scared to talk about it, even if they have a faith. Um, and the powerful thing about God is He's all our Father, right? He's there for all of us, and His path is designed for us, and it's something we could all share and agree upon and help each other through. But we edge Him out, and that edges a lot of people out. So, I see a lot of disconnect. I see a lot of pain. I see a lot of people who you can't build a real relationship with because they don't have that relationship with God either, right? So it's like not only are they edging God out, but you edge people out of your life too by doing that. So am I nervous for the next generation? Of course I am, because I got 4 kids. But I also believe in God's plan. I know He has a point, a purpose, and I know He doesn't want us to worry. So I want to say I do worry for my kids and the next generation. At the same time, I believe there's going to be a cycle and a time where hopefully our stories, our DNA is passed down. And just like you, Philip, 48 years old, I'm sure your mom was worried about you, telling you this story, right? And it was by 60 where you started understanding it. So one of my favorite lines with Jay-Z is he says, my job is to cut time in half, right? So if I got something by 40, I'm hoping my kids get it by 20, right? Like I'm trying to cut time in half. So, hopefully my kids can learn from my mistakes. And I let my ego go by sharing my testimony, sharing my story, right? So, but yeah, I'm with you guys. I think ego is very strong out there. But just to kind of give it another, I guess, depth to this, what are some of the consequences that you have seen because of your ego? Like what has it really done?
I lost $80 million behind my ego. And I have to live with that. I lost an incredible woman, but at the time I didn't see the beauty, the grace. And that's why I don't mind sharing my story, because if it can save one person, I made a decision to leave my wife. When I met her, I didn't have any money in the bank. She came from a very successful family. And the reason I had an airplane, my father-in-law had an airplane. The reason I wanted a big yacht, my father-in-law had one. The reason I wanted a big house, he had one. So I was trying to keep up with my father-in-law, Jim. And but Jim was a very humble man. But I had an ego, man. And I grew up poor. And I put too much importance on money. I put money became my God. I put money above it all. Since then I've learned. I've met people that are worth $1 billion, and I met people that are worth $3 million, but they're some of the richest people I've ever met. So I think right now in America, I can't speak for no other country, it's so superficial. It reminds me of myself in certain ways, because people put money above God right now.
Look at social media, right? Social media, ego, especially our audience, especially our people that are, watching us. Social media is big, and chasing clout, right? And then all of us, comparing ourselves to that too. So like, in real life, you have an ego with your family, right? I think of like refusing to apologize, right? You get in an argument. You said you lost your wife, right? And your family dynamic has changed. And ego does affect us, and not just sales, right? It affects us with our family. It affects our money. It affects our businesses, right? Um, Losing connection with your kids. You know, I've had times where I've had an ego with my sons and I was right. I'm dad, right? I know the answer. Um, and the one thing I made sure every time I would feel that guilt and that pain, and I didn't have the ego. I made sure to apologize to my kids and say I was sorry for that temper or that anger or that thing I did. And I've probably said sorry to my kids more than I have my spouse. And that's not the right answer. But you know, that was the relationship I didn't want to edge out at all, right? My kids to stay close to me. So, you know, I can see where I've pushed out my wife or I've had an ego and not apologizing, right, as quickly as I could. Um, or even in money, right? Overspending, trying to prove something, like you said, right? Your father-in-law had a boat, you want a boat.
But that's the point I was trying to make, because, you know, I'm a 73-year-old man, and so I view the world different than I did as a 22-year-old man.
Yep.
Because I grew up poor, I wanted things to solidify who I was as a person. I opened up conversations with people, not talking about what I've done in this society, but what I own. Oh, yeah, I just parked my jet over it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, just shallow, man. And my
Just
best
jet
friend,
dropping.
yeah, I mean, you know, because, you know, I didn't understand. And it's hard to look back at your life and realize what's really, really valuable. You know, so many young people now think if they can eat at a $700 a night restaurant, they're rich.
Hmm.
That
They
ain't
just
getting
lost money.
rich. That ain't, that ain't, you know, my son and I were talking about this, my oldest son, and he's 40. And his name is Gary. And he said, Dad, you know, I was about to go down that same road you were on, you know, thinking I need the fanciest car, the blah, blah, blah. He said, but you know what I came to the conclusion of? I said, what, son? He says, I was doing that for other people, not for myself,
Hmm.
to impress
Good for
other
him.
people.
Good for him.
Yep.
You know how proud I was to hear my
I
son
was
say
about to say that. You must have
oh
been
my
proud.
God.
You were
I
like,
mean,
damn, son.
you want to talk about a dad? I mean, it almost makes me want to cry, because I wish I would understand that. I did a lot of things to impress others. There's a gentleman that lives in L.A. His name is Cliff Johnson, and he's probably one of the richest people I've ever met. Not monetarily, but what he's done for the community of Los Angeles.
Emotionally,
He
spiritually. Yeah.
he was the spearhead of building the Girls and Boys Club in Watts.
Hmm.
And everybody told him, you won't get people to do it. You're wasting your time. And I just was fortunate enough to be in LA, because he was trying to get my business. He's a banker, private banking at Union Bank. And I mean, he knows everybody, Magic, you name it, blah, blah, blah. And to see the celebration when they were honoring him. And I walked up to him after the thing and I said, you know, Cliff, you're the richest man I know. And he says, Phil, he says, the reason I am who I am, my dad shaped me to be the man I am. He says, I could have made more money, but I wanted to do more in the community. And they stood up there for 2 hours and talked about all the accomplishments he's done for the community.
They talked about him, not him talking
Yes,
about himself.
Seth. And he's the quietest, most humble human being you'd ever meet. And I hope if he's listening to this and if he ever hears that, and I've told him that, I said, you're the richest person I've ever met. Because think about that. He helped kids in a rough area to get a boys and girls club that everybody in LA said it won't happen. And he made it happen.
Mm.
And he
Amen.
talked about when he gave a speech about the hurdles he had to come to, you know, to raise the money and do all the things he had to do. But
Yeah.
think about that. And its name is his name's on the building, so that'll be there long after he's gone. The
So,
money
Wow.
will go though, and you can't take it
so,
with you.
so how do you guys think? How do you think you fight ego? How do you
You got. I think
come?
it's. Can I answer? I think it's. I didn't put God first, and you got to understand where I grew up. My mom was a prayer warrior, so I saw it firsthand. That's why it hurts even more when I tell
What's
my
in your
story.
face?
I saw her. I was about to lose my dealership in San Rafael, California. It was San Rafael Ford. And every time I was in trouble, I called my mom because she would put me on the path. I was driving in the car and I called my mom and I said, Mom, I think I'm gonna lose San Rafael Ford. And this was in 94. And she says, you know what's the problem with you, son? You think you can do it all on your own. She said, why are you driving down that highway? Hand it over to God.
Mm.
And because I was desperate, now you got to understand, I fought my faith, even though I was raised in the church.
Wow,
I did it.
fought your faith.
I
Hmm.
fought my faith, man, and I grew up with it. I mean, my mom was the most incredible person. Her and Steve would sit there and have Bible study for 10 hours. I remember one time his wife, Lori, called. And Lori says, are you planning on coming home? Are you still at the office? She says, no, I'm with, he called my mom, Miss Von Seal. And we're having Bible study. And she laughed. She says, well, okay, I'll see you when I see you. And she laughed and hung up.
It's like I'll see you next week.
I'll see you when I
Mm.
see you. And I thought, wow. And his family is being there, but I never even knew it because he raised his kids so humble.
When it comes to business, and you're mentioning your friend who's obviously very successful, and business was a big part of his life, but God and his true happiness and peace was more important. But
Yeah.
it
Amen.
made me think of the idea of thinking you don't need advice from others, and I wanted to maybe even touch in with David since he's represents our younger generation on that. And if you have any stories or anything that you relate to on that end.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. I wanted to bring this story up, and this works for this question. Essentially, I know this guy. I'm not going to get into too much details because I don't want to out him. He's a little bit older than me, but he, I talk to him every once in a while, every time I get a chance. He's a really cool dude, very like laid back kind of guy. But it happens to be whenever we talk about, doing better in the sales world, doing better in, life in general, he kind of starts to shut down and he starts saying that, um, like he tries to tell me too. He's like, you got to be realistic about things. And that's whenever somebody tells me be realistic, it means that they're going to be negative about something in my eyes. And I don't need that negative energy. I don't need that negative mindset that somebody might have. I mean, all the power to you. I'm going to try to still tell you and insinuate my positive mindset onto you. And if you don't like it, then that's
Right.
on you. But this guy, he likes to say, you need to be realistic about like what's going to happen in life. So the guy I was talking about, he essentially, he, how do I say it? He's an older guy. So, he has that mindset. Here, can you mute yourself, Philip? Sorry. Um, where he feels like he's seen a lot, where he feels like, there's nothing much better than just small steps. And I was telling him my story about how once I changed my mindset to be supposedly a realistic person to a dreamer, to somebody who believes, even though it's not in my face, that something will come to me, by the grace of God, by the grace of the universe, whatever you want to call it. I've been able to create my own business, publish my books. I've been able to double my income. I've been able to do all these things, and all I did was switch a little thought from negative to positive, and I kept doing it every single damn day. And you could tell it kind of like switched a thing in his head. Like he was like, wow, you're a really positive person. And I appreciate that. But when I try to explain this to him, it's not me trying to be ego about it. It's not me trying to like show off. It's me trying to say like, hey, you can do it too. You know, anybody can do it. I am a normal person. Like another thing I read a while back that got really in my head was in college, my ego was based around me being a writer. That was all I would tell people. I would always tell people I'm a writer. That's all I want to do in life. I'm really good at it. And don't get me wrong, I was decent at it. You know, now I'm reading my college stuff and it's total crap, but we'll get back to that. You know, now,
You've grown. You've grown
yeah, I've
since then.
grown.
Yes.
Essentially, during COVID, I went through this whole like ego death without all the drugs and all that, just reading and watching videos. I went through this ego death in the sense that um, I realized like we're all people. We're people that just like a certain thing or we do a certain thing, but that doesn't mean we are that thing, you know? And once I
Yeah.
realized that I wasn't just a writer, I wasn't just a guy, I wasn't just this, that I can really
Yeah.
excel in life because I could be everything. I can be anything I want. As long as I put the time in, I put the work in and believe that it's out there and believe that God is on my side. So that's,
Amen.
yeah.
David,
Thank you. Thank you.
just have this all over, and I like what you said a lot because, we are just all people, right? And we're all humans, but we aren't what we like. I spent a lot of time in my life where I was just a basketball player. I didn't have friends around me really until I played basketball and I got the
Yeah.
attention and now I kind of refute, like, I don't like when people think I'm just one thing. And if anything, I feel people often don't think much of me, and that's fine because I don't have the ego and I don't really need them to, and
Yeah.
um, I have friends that are fancy. Most people that know me, if they see me at work, I'm not very fancy. I never have been, don't need
Yep.
to be, and I don't need to prove anything. But when you talked about the belief in that things will turn out right, I do pretty well at my job, and I'll take time off. I will have time with my family, time with God. I'll get to the parking lot sometimes and I'm late, but I have my 3-minute devotional book. I have my 3-minute devotional book and I'll read the word of God for just a moment. It will ask you a few deep questions. And like, even though I'm late, I'll take that second to have that moment with him. And sure enough, things work out. Like, God is great because I don't make as many calls as people. I don't put as much time as other people do.
Yep.
And they are very deserving of all their success. And when I look at my success, I literally give it to God because I'm like, God was great to me this month. He provided for me because
Yep.
I almost as if I'm not deserving, but then at the same time I realize I am. God loves me. God wants to give you great things. He wants abundance
Yep.
for you. So if you're thinking, and there's a good friend of mine, he told me once, your attitude will determine your altitude. And if you're thinking that like, oh, you have to be realistic, and this is your view of realistic, then that's about as much as you're going to get, or not even.
Yep.
But if you open that up and put no limitations on not yourself but God, right? Because God has no limitations. He can provide and he will. So yeah, man, I like what you said, David, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
All of us really, right? Because we've gotten ourselves to a different place than we could have been, and some through hard lessons. So
Sure.
let me bring this next thing up here, fellas.
Oh, Philip was trying to say something.
Oh, go ahead, Philip. Cut that up. No,
No, I was just saying that I'm proud that you guys we're talking about this because I think it's important. I think to get everybody where they need to be, I think if we put God back into our lives, I think it's a positive. I think it's a very
Yep.
positive thing because being without him, we're lost without him.
I agree.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And even when we don't think we are, right? And whereas, we always call the devil the enemy, right? He's the enemy. And when the enemy is providing for us and he's given us, and we're sinning and we're getting away with it and we're winning and we're making money, it's just a bigger setup. It's a bigger setup. It's a bigger, it's all smoke and mirrors. Like it's just a bigger fail and a harder crash that's going to come from it. Right. So, yeah. All right. So this is my favorite time of the episode, the listener question. We have some questions, and anyone who's listening, you have a comment, you have your own experience. Heck, you just have a question. Message us. We got you. God's got you. And he has us. So we got you too. But here's a listener here. His name is Kevin. He says, "Hey guys, I'm 23. I just started my career. Everyone tells me I need to be confident to get ahead, but how do I build confidence without letting it slip into ego?" It's a great question. Yeah.
Wow. How do you build confidence?
When
I look back at my ego, I think the reason I did what I did, because I wasn't as confident as I thought I was. Because confidence, you don't really have to have an ego. It's in the movement you do and what you do and how you do it. But when you have to talk about it, that's when I think the ego, you're trying to build yourself up in order to be able to be successful. So even though I fault myself for it, I think it was, to make myself feel bigger and stronger. I think that's why I was so braggadocious. I think I was building myself up to believe all the things I believe. But I think you can do it. You can do quiet confidence. Ben Sale is not a bragging guy, and he's worth what, 7 times, 8 times more than I was.
So I would say to Kevin listening, it sounds like what I'm getting from you, Philip, is confidence lifts people up with you, where ego pushes them down, in a sense.
I motivated people because I had over 300 employees, and a lot of the people that worked with me, they have become very, very successful, and they thank me for it because I pushed people because I was a great coach. But when in my personal life, I think I had too much ego because I didn't put God at the top of the tier. I put money above all things. I was in love, wanted to be the richest guy.
Yeah. What about you, David? How do you stay confident? How does Kevin stay confident early in his career? He's not too far behind you, right? He's 23, without letting it lead up into ego. What do you think? What's your advice?
Confident and ego. I think once you realize what the difference is, that'll help you not get far into the dark side, as you would say. Once you realize confidence is, like you said, lifting other people up, but also knowing your worth, knowing that you are somebody of value, somebody who can bring this and that to the table, but you are not better than anyone because of that. Because the moment you think that you're better than somebody else, that's ego. Amen. That's when you're pushing God out. Jesus was always somebody who would hang out with the lowest of the lowest in communities. He was somebody who would hang out with, like drunks and prostitutes. And, I'm not saying people have to do that now, but I'm not also saying that you're better than those people. Yeah, you're humble. You could be making $1 million, you can make $1 billion, but once you start thinking you're better than the average Joe or the person down the street, that's when ego is winning.
I think he just hit the nail on the head. I really do.
David's crushing.
I think you couldn't have said it any better, because when you think your stuff is more valuable than who you are as a person, and I think you said it the right way. Yes. Amen.
Yeah. I think you said it absolutely the right way.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So, you guys already said it. In my opinion, how do you stay confident without an ego? What Philip said. Kevin, you ask me, my answers are right up the same way. You bring people up, you lift them up, you don't put them down, but you also don't let people put you down either, right? God's got you. You're a child of God, and you deserve as much as anyone else, and they do too. And, never look down on anybody, right? Unless you're lifting them up. That's it.
And I think what David said, just because you have $8 billion or somebody has $1 million or 500,000, it don't make you better. Money don't make you better.
No.
It really don't. I mean, it makes you financially where you can buy things, and we all need it to buy things, but it don't make you a better person than the other person.
Wow, not one bit.
No way.
Yeah. Stay humble, stay real, stay kind, caring, giving, right? All while working hard for your family, for those you love. And if as long as you're doing that, Kevin, you're gonna do all right. You're gonna be looking in the right direction. Right. And when you don't know and you're not sure, give it to God. I say to myself, God, I don't know what's going on or why. I trust you. I know you have a plan. And I put this in your hands today, right? Everything I give to you today. So if it's supposed to happen, I know you'll make it happen. And give me the sight, give me the knowledge, give me the words, and help me be aware of what you have in front of me so I can take your blessing, right? Give it to God. And hey, if you don't know the answer, pray on it. Any last words, boys?
I'd say it was a great conversation, guys. Our DNA was great tonight.
That's right. We're getting there.
Yep. I would say take care of your confidence, protect that peace, and get rid of the ego.
That's right. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to our DNA. If you got something from today's conversation, share it with a brother, a son, a friend, because ego is one battle we all face. And until the next time, stay grounded, stay growing, and keep your RDNA real.